Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here at Book Passage. Whether you're out in California or on the East Coast, we welcome you to our Conversations with Authors, one of our incredible online events. This event will be archived, so if you have to hop in the middle of it or can't or not have people that you know that are interested but we're not able to get to their computer at this time, it will be archived on our website, Book Passage. And my name's Cheryl Bronstein. I'm one of the event coordinators here, and I'm just thrilled to welcome you all to a very important event today with author Holly Trantham. And Book Passage is just thrilled to bring you these incredible voices. We call them our Conversations with Authors. We have many, many events going on at Book Passage, and we pride ourselves in bringing you maybe some voices that you may not hear everywhere. We have lots of events in person. We have them online. We have classes, which are both virtual and in person. All of that information is on our website, bookpassage.com. One event that we have coming up, we do have on Thursday, May 16th at 7 p.m. at Dominican University in San Rafael. We'll be hosting the incredible Jan Psaki, and she's got her new book out called Say More: Lessons from the Work, the White House, and the World. So again, that's just one of the amazing things we have going on at Book Passage. Look at our calendar. We've got lots of events to fit your timeline. And here at Book Passage, we pride ourselves on presenting maybe some different, less mainstream voices, and this evening is no exception. We are thrilled to share Beyond Getting By from the woman behind the financial diet. And this new title will teach you how to create and pay for a life that you truly enjoy and one that you can be proud of. As a mother of 3 grown daughters, I cannot stress enough how important it is to embrace power and trends laid out in this incredible book, Beyond Getting By. This full color guide is receiving rave reviews on all the book sites. Both critics and peers have praised the book's interactive activities and sound advice. Beyond Getting By is for women interested in a life where money is simply a tool, but never a reflection of her worth. It is for a woman who understands the limits of gamifying personal finance, and that following trends isn't the same thing as creating a sustainable, wealth-generating plan for the future. And that is something that I know we all want. Holly Trantham is the creative director of The Financial Diet, or as we call it, TFD. She first joined TFD in 2016, and she has been facilitating money conversations all over the internet ever since that time. She's helped shape the voice of TFD into becoming the premier destination for women's personal finance, including growing her YouTube channel to over 1 million subscribers. That is quite a feat. Congratulations, Holly. She has also led editorial partnerships with brands such as Wealthsimple, Off Saks Fifth, Mint Miracle, FICO, and more. And in her day-to-day life, you can always find her devouring either a romance novel, a slice of homemade cake, or maybe both at the same time. She lives in Brooklyn with her husband and her beautiful 2 cats that we got to see before the event. So please give a very warm welcome to a truly talented writer, director, and leader. Please welcome Holly Trantham.
Hi, thank you so much, Cheryl. It's such an honor to be here. I work at The Financial Diet, where we're an all-women team based here in New York City. And I have been here since 2016. I'm the creative director, so I mostly work behind the scenes on all of our content on YouTube, podcast, social media, newsletter, etc. But anybody who follows us for a long time probably is familiar with me. I also appear on our social media channels quite a lot, and I lead a lot of our workshops, which is leading me to what I have planned for this evening, which is a little bit of a peek behind the book, as well as a slight workshop style look at some of the interactive activities that the book holds. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and have a little presentation I'm going to go through. Okay, so yeah, Beyond Getting By, The Financial Diet's Guide to Abundant and Intentional Living. This is our second book. Our first book came out in 2018, and it was just called The Financial Diet, and that was written by our co-founder and CEO, Chelsea Fagan, who is also the main voice on our YouTube channel for anybody who is familiar with us. TFD began as a personal blog about getting better with money back in 2014, and it eventually grew quite a lot. It grew into a website that published money stories from all different kinds of perspectives. We also launched a YouTube channel in 2015. We were originally part of Complexly, which is Hank and John Green's company, production company, and then we, a few years later than that, went off on our own and now are totally independent. And we have over 1 million subscribers now, and we produce monthly video essays on topics ranging on all kinds of things that have to do with money. And as well, we also have a weekly podcast. We have a newsletter. We have a Patreon and paid YouTube membership program with digital, where members get access to digital workshops, guidebooks, premium member newsletters, et cetera, all different kinds of things. And yeah, as I said, we're an all-women team with a mission to fundamentally change and improve the way we all talk about money, to take it from something shameful or intimidating into something we can all feel confident about. Like I said, I've been with TFD since 2016. I first worked on the website editing and writing, and now I'm creative director, so I work on producing all of our YouTube videos, ideating everything that we put out, leading a lot of workshops. I've led workshops on everything from budgeting for your personality type to how to organize everything in your home and in your spreadsheets. And I couldn't be happier with this job. I certainly never thought when I was in college as an English major that I would end up talking about money for a living. I certainly am not a inherently mathy person or someone who is necessarily like drawn to finances and financial wellness just without any other prompting. But I started following TFD myself back when it was just a personal blog, started working here, and it's definitely shaped my personal relationship with money. And I definitely have a lot of thoughts about it now, which I've put into this new book, which I have right here, Beyond Getting By. As I mentioned, this is our second book. This is a little sneak peek at what we do at the Financial Diet. So again, anybody watching this probably already knows what we do, produce a lot of YouTube videos. That's the bread and butter of our, content day to day. These are just a couple of examples of some of the topics that we talk about on our podcast and on our video essays. So we definitely approach money from a cultural and social lens, not just from a practical viewpoint, although we do definitely have a lot of educational content as well. And having the opportunity to write books has been great for us. It's a great way for us to be able to explore these topics even more in depth than we're able to do in our regular content. So our first book is more of a primer on how to get good with money and set up a financial plan to get better with money in a year, understand all of the basics, know the difference between an IRA and a 401k, things like that. And this new book, Beyond Getting By, is about what comes next. And it was written by myself, but it was also designed by our co-founder, Lauren Verhaeg. And it does have a few sections from Chelsea Fagan, our CEO and co-founder. She wrote a really great chapter on the 4-day work week, which is something that we have adopted at TFD and is definitely something we get asked about quite a lot. It's definitely, this book is more about what comes next. It's not, I don't think of it as a purely financial book because it's not. It is definitely more philosophical, I would say. It is about money, but it's also about your career and also about looking at how you're spending your time and how getting more money with no purpose doesn't really make sense, but obtaining more money with a purpose of freeing up more time, giving yourself more options, and being more in control of your life, that's the ultimate goal. And so we talk in this book, we talk a lot about, the idea of the girl boss, that kind of had a chokehold on millennial women around the mid to late aughts, and how we're kind of overcoming the idea that we have to hustle our way to, hustle our way to success financially or professionally, and that at the expense of everything else in our lives. So this is definitely a much more holistic view of money than I think a lot of finance books are. Not to say that there aren't plenty of really great, really practical finance books out there that are also worth reading. So yes, this is our second book. It is also a full color guide to help you create and pay for a life you love, where money is the means to get there, not the end goal itself. And each chapter does come with a corresponding interactive exercise, such as redefining your personal and professional roles, keeping a self-advocacy journal for your next performance review, defining a happiness threshold goal income, and facilitating an intentional income plan. Those are just a few of the examples. As you can see here, it's just like we hired an illustrator to also bring it to life with her super beautiful illustrations. Her name is Cindy Niu. I can't say enough good things about her and just working on this book generally. It was, I wrote it, but I think the designer and the illustrator really truly brought it to life. So these are just a couple of, I know I just held it up for you, but these are a couple clearer ideas of what the inside of the book it looks like for anybody who is following along. As you can see, Cindy's illustrations are just so gorgeous and really painterly, and I think make this a really beautiful book that's worth owning a physical copy of. But we also do have an audiobook, so it's anybody can access it any way that they would prefer. So today I'm going to walk through a couple of the exercises that I have in this book. It is, like I said, there are tons of interactive exercises. If you wanted to, you could not read the essay portions of the book and just go through each chapter and do the worksheet style exercises. That's definitely something that someone could do if they didn't have time to read the whole thing. Obviously, I think the essay portions definitely give more context to the exercises. So to me, it makes sense to read them first. But like if I think for people who don't want to take the time, have trouble sitting down with the book sometimes, I think that the worksheets are really designed to help you, connect with the content and in a way that is easier to put it into the context of your own life. So a couple of the exercises I wanted to walk us through today are focused on overcoming a mindless spending culture, or FOMO, that I think a lot of us fall victim to. I talk a lot about the rise of Shein in the book and how ultra fast fashion has made us feel entitled to cheapness. And when we think of the question, can money buy happiness? I think a lot of us just picture buying things and thinking that's going to be happiness. And that's really easy for people to say, like, of course money can't buy you happiness because things can't buy you happiness. And then for other people to be like, things make me happy. I do think money can buy happiness, and that is something I get into in the book. I think that past a certain point, there's a lot to be said about the happiness threshold, which I dive into quite a lot. There's this idea that after a certain salary or income level, our happiness diminishes or has diminishing returns by earning more. So I definitely think, there's arguments to be said for either side, but the thing that money can do for us is buy us security, buy us options, buy you time, buy you more control over your life and your choices. I don't think it has much to do with buying material items. And I think that, between email marketing we're constantly receiving, TikTok and Instagram Shop making it easier than ever to just buy things you don't need or didn't even know about when you're just seeing someone sharing them. People can share, influencers can share in their videos now direct links to just buy what they're talking about right there. And there's, we have tons of targeted ads. We have tons of undisclosed sponsored content on influencer pages that we're inundated with. We think that they're just posting about, an outfit they got, an experience they had at a really chic hotel or something, but actually they either receive those things for free or are being outright paid to post about them and not disclosing it. So I think it's very normal to feel very overwhelmed with our spending culture and the FOMO that we all feel, especially online, when it comes to mindless spending. So it's not a personal flaw. It's not a personal failure if you find yourself spending emotionally, overspending, trying to make decisions that you think are good ones, but ultimately end up not being good purchases because we're just so inundated with it all of the time. But I do argue in the book, and I think, you'll be able to tell as I continue talking through this, I think that obviously we all deserve to buy things we love, spend our money on things that bring us joy. I just think that it's a harder line than we think it is to between what's going to be worth spending our money on and what isn't. And this is one of the quotes, a quote from the book that I find I just turn to again and again. As part of the Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest studies of adult life in the world, researchers followed a group of men and eventually their offspring for over 80 years. They found one overwhelming factor that predicted long and happy lives: close relationships. A different report from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found autonomy, or the feeling that your life, its activities and habits are self-chosen and self-endorsed, to be the key factor in determining happiness. And personally, I think that when we so mindlessly consume, we have this really mindless consumer culture. And when we are fall so victim to that and are so, tied up in the next, the things that we're going to buy that are going to ostensibly make our lives better, and when that's what we spend all of our money on, it's just, I don't think that we actually are in living that autonomous life that we know from so much research is what ultimately makes people happy. And also on the topic of close relationships, I do think, being able to buy so many things at our fingertips and just consume as much as we want with no barriers to any of it. We don't even have to go to a store. A lot of us, we don't even have to enter our credit card information. It's already in our phones. It's yet another instance of convenience culture kind of taking over our lives. And I think that it's one of those factors that's compounding our increased isolation. I think anybody here would know that we're living in a loneliness epidemic, and I don't think that this is helping our consumer. I don't think our consumer culture is helping. So I do think, taking the steps to unravel its hold in your own life is a really great goal. And so back to buying too much things that you don't use, things you don't end up spending money on, things that you don't actually end up getting any joy from. Most of us already aren't wearing what we own. This is a study conducted in the UK from Stitch Fix, which is a brand that is clothing rental or curated clothing delivery service. Anyway, it's one of those clothing startups. Researchers surveyed 2,000 adults and found that people have an average of over $260 worth of unworn clothes in their closets. And according to the survey, only 6% of people have actually worn everything in their wardrobe at least once. I think we all know those people who, and maybe make fun of them, those people who always have to have a different outfit on in an Instagram post or in a social media video. But I think that's a lot more common than we think it is. And I also think even if that's not everyone's individual mindset, I think that we still succumb to overbuying, especially as women, because we are constantly told we need things in order to feel happy and fulfilled, when that's not really true. We are not where we are made to feel like, we can't attend a wedding without buying a new wedding guest dress. And that's just not true. You can rewear things. Yeah, I think that shopping your closet is a big part of that, but it's also just overcoming the feeling of need and the feeling of missing out if you don't buy things. So how do you break that cycle for yourself? One step, which is much easier said than done, is learning to connect your spending with your values so that you know intuitively whether a purchase is going to be worth it to you or not. Redefining what affordable means to you, which means assessing items in terms of cost per use rather than cost, like flat cost. So what I mean by cost per use is, if say you bought, a $20 fast fashion top, you wear it 2 times. That's a $10 cost per use. $20 divided by 2. If you buy a $100 blouse that you wear 100 times because it lasts that long and you can keep it for years because it was well made, that's $100 divided by 100 wears. That's $1 cost per use. So definitely trying to, buy things that are going to be longer lasting and ultimately save you more in the long run, because they last you longer. You don't have to replace them, and also, you're happy with them in the first place, right? That's not what this book is about, but like definitely trying to find, when it comes to clothing, things that you're actually going to be happy wearing and that you're going to turn to again and again, because that's also one of the reasons probably that so many of us wear so little of our closet or don't wear everything we own, because we always turn to those things that we feel our best in, or that are the most comfortable, or that we're the most confident in. So you just have to decide what's ultimately worth it to you in all areas of your spending. Clothing is just one example. And like I said earlier, shop your closet. I definitely think so many of us have things that we don't make enough use of. I think that goes for everything in our homes, though, not just clothing. I definitely think, I've definitely seen myself wanting to get kitchen and organization gadgets I see, or systems I see on TikTok, on Instagram. But if I go look at my Tupperware drawer, I have something that works perfectly fine already. I don't need to get, the perfectly matching acrylic containers to put my cereals in, things like that. And lastly, I think confronting your past spending habits and building the habit of making purchases intentionally is really important. And again, that's like a little bit easier said than done, but I do have exercises for all of these in the book. So the first one is clarifying your financial values. This is in the section I have on the happiness threshold. Like I said earlier, that is this idea that after a certain level of income, our happiness is going to decrease. I don't think that level is true for everybody. There was a really famous study a few years ago who the author, who recently passed away, and who was a really great researcher, had came up with this idea that after $75,000 in income, happiness diminishes. And that was, kind of just across the board. And that was a very big generalization. But I do think there's some truth to the idea that after a certain point, we're all going to not be happier earning more money. I do think it is a higher point than a lot of us think it is, because I think that, one of the things that is the biggest happiness factor is autonomy and being able to control your own life. And the way that we're all going to be able to do that more is by earning more money after a certain point. Having more money means you have the opportunity to walk away from a job that you really hate, or start a venture that is risky, but you're really passionate about, or stop working, like retire earlier than you necessarily needed to, or work part-time so you don't have to be spending all of your time dedicated to work. For the purpose of what I'm going to talk about today, though, I think we're just going to focus on the financial values, how they influence our spending. spending and income are definitely go hand in hand when it comes to acting on your values when it comes to money, because you want to make sure, yes, you want to make sure you're budgeting for and spending on the things that are ultimately going to be the most worth it to you, but you also, you know, you have to make sure you're earning enough to cover those bases as well. But yes, I think clarifying your financial values is really important. This is a cognitive behavioral therapy exercise, actually, I found out while I was researching for this book. And basically you just list out all of your values, and then assess whether your habits, in this case, your spending habits, whether they are aligned with your values. So one of the ones I put on this list, these are obviously just suggestions. Anybody can put whatever they want, list whatever they want as their values. One of the ones I put on here is urbanism. That's a big value of mine. I live in Brooklyn. I really value being able to walk and take public transportation everywhere I go. I love not owning a car. I can't imagine going back to a life where I have to rely on a car. That is a huge value of mine. So when I find myself being, more reliant on Ubers and getting cabs and just like not taking advantage of the fact that I have the ability to walk everywhere and nearby, and it is a very walkable area, or the fact that I have very easy access to, let's be real, it has its ups and downs, but relatively good public transportation, especially compared to the country at large. When I'm not relying on those things, and I'm just defaulting to the convenience of taking an Uber wherever, I definitely end up spending more than I want to on those things, and then more than in a lot of cases, more than I budgeted for them. But I also just feel like my spending just isn't aligning with what I really care about as a person. And, on a emotional, spiritual level, this doesn't feel great. So I definitely recommend, going through this list or coming up with your own list of values, and then trying to assess whether your purchases fall within those values. And I think, we all have a lot of values. I think that narrowing it down to the top few for this exercise and what's like really truly the most important is most useful, because we all care about a lot of things, but we only have the capacity to care about so much at a given time. And I think these also change throughout our lives. And then this is actually from a separate chapter than the one on the happiness threshold and clarifying your financial values. But I do think that these exercises go really hand in hand. So when it comes to spending FOMO and overspending, overconsuming because of this culture we live in, one thing I really recommend doing, I've always recommended actually since I've worked at TFD, is to go through all of your expenses on your credit card or your bank statement. Find ones you just don't remember making. That's really important. Or find ones that were just completely a waste of money to you, not worth it. Sometimes that's nights out where the food really sucked, or you didn't have fun, or you felt pressured to spend in a social situation that you didn't actually really want to be in. Sometimes it's clothing that you ultimately didn't end up wearing. Sometimes it's going on a vacation to somewhere that you saw on Instagram that was much less exciting and nice in real life. So I definitely think it's worth it to go through and look at spending from the past month, maybe even longer, and write down any purchases you regret, and then any purchases that you would happily make again. I think if you spent money on something, but you would absolutely spend that money again because you had such a good experience, or you loved the item you bought so much, you would definitely spend it again. That's also really worth noting. And it shouldn't be based on any other person's idea or society's idea of what is worth spending money on. As women, we often get a lot of flack for wanting to spend on things like makeup and clothing. And, as much as I have said, don't spend on clothes you're not going to wear enough, it's still worth it to spend on clothes that are going to make you feel like the best version of yourself. That doesn't mean don't spend on clothes. There's no shame on what you're spending on here. And also it could be like a really obscure hobby, or time with family, going, maybe you spend more on transportation than other people every year because you have family that lives far, but you want to see them a lot. And that's totally, we all have things that are going to be more worth it to us. And then I think I also put together this matrix so you can plot out where future purchases would fall if you were to make them. So I gave some examples here of how I would plot the decision to buy a couch. So if you buying a low quality futon from a big box store, would probably fall on the frugal and mindless side for me, or quadrant. Frugal and intentional would be something like spending hours until I found the perfect secondhand option on Facebook Marketplace. A lavish and mindless option would be getting a high-end couch, but putting it on a credit card because I couldn't afford it right then. Or a lavish and intentional purchase would be contributing to a new couch sinking fund and buying the best option once I had enough in that fund to fund it, to buy the couch. And a sinking fund is something I will get to in just a second. So I think, as long as it doesn't really matter if things are more expensive or less expensive, as long as that you can afford them, you've made a plan to spend for them. And even if you're planning so you don't have to plan, which is what a sinking fund is. Again, I'll get to that in just a second. As long as they're falling on the intentional side of that matrix, I think that those are the purchases we want to be making. Some people really value spontaneity. That's not my journey. That's not one of my values, but I think you can plan in a way where you can be spontaneous. And that's where I'm going to get into sinking funds. So when you're committed to making intentional spending decisions, you may find yourself needing to spend more money at one time. When we're used to buying the cheapest options possible, it ends up being more expensive a lot of times in the long run, because it's easy to say, oh, this is on sale, I can't miss it, or oh, this is only $15, like why not get it? Why not get 6? I think that always comes back to bite you if you are making those decisions, without any forethought. Again, I should specify, a lot of people are in a position where they can only afford to make cheap, frugal spending decisions. And that's not really who that criticism is for. Obviously, you have to get by first, but once you get beyond that point, that's when we need to start thinking about the longer term impacts of our spending decisions. Sinking funds, I love them. It is a revolving savings account for specific purchases, which you add to regularly. And then, I didn't finish writing this point, but you add to I'll edit this right after this. You add to regularly, ideally through setting up automated direct deposits, and then pull from as you need to. So my biggest sinking fund is for vacations. My husband and I put quite a big portion of our take-home pay, I would say, into a sinking fund for travel and seeing family, because all of our family lives pretty far away and we do like to see them pretty often. And we also really love going on annual trips, and those cost money. So that's just something that comes out of each pay. I think those are technically from my paycheck. So it's a direct deposit that goes immediately from my paycheck into a savings account. And then once I have enough in the savings account or we have enough in it to put money towards a trip, then we just pull from it without feeling any guilt about it, because we've made that plan. So a sinking fund is really great for people who like to be spontaneous, but want to be good with money, because it means you can set yourself up to kind of succeed and in wanting to spend the way you want to in the moment. And in the book, I'm not going to walk through all the math here, but I do have some exercises for walking through your sinking funds and setting them up. There is going to be a different calculation to do based on this right here is just how to decide how much you want to put in each sinking fund. So, if you want to have $6,000 a year to spend on vacations and travel, you would want to have $500 a month going into the sinking fund. And then you would be able to pull from it as much as you want. And then you're going to determine how much to set aside from each paycheck based on when you're paid. So if you're paid monthly, you're going to just divide the annual amount you want to save by 12, twice a month, divided by 24, and then every other week, which is what I am, divided by 26. And then freelancers will have to do a little bit more math. But I'm going to stop this presentation. That was the end what I had, because I was seeing we have some questions to go through. So I will stop sharing now. So yeah, thank you for putting all of the questions in the chat. What are the 3 most important tips you would give to young women just starting careers after college? I think that one of the most important things is networking. Unfortunately, most jobs are going to come from referrals rather than cold email. Obviously, cold applying to jobs can work. It's worked for me. It's worked for plenty of people I know. But I do think, utilizing your network, maintaining, and also making sure you maintain your network, keep in contact with people from college, from internships. That's the more visible you are in everyone's mind, the more they're going to think of you when new opportunities come up. Another one is, clean up the social media feeds. People do look at it. It's really important. And I think just establishing yourself on LinkedIn, establishing kind of a person or another platform, of course, but just establishing some kind of personal brand. Having a website is really, really useful, even if it's just a 1-page resume site, just to have some professional presence that people can find you on. Apologies for the cat noises behind me. Do you think college loans debt should play a role in choosing a job in your early career? Yeah, I mean, I think that, we really undersell ourselves early in our career a lot of the time and accept less money than we actually should be making. Obviously, entry-level roles are going to have very, very different salary ranges depending on your industry and role. I am married to a software engineer, and I went out of college and went into a magazine internship immediately. So we had very different post-college incomes, even if things have leveled out later on. But I definitely think, there's a whole section in the book that goes into student loans, and especially when we're in this time period of uncertainty with the future of forgiveness and relief. If you have federal loans, those are what's going to ever get any kind of relief. Those are the ones that are going to be possible. So it's definitely going to be, important to, unless you're in a really dire situation, not refinancing those into private loans for a lot of people, because you want to have the opportunity to get those forgiven. Consumer debt, any other kind of debt, obviously, especially if it's high interest debt, you do want to pay that off as soon as possible. So, obviously, I think it sometimes does pay off to take the higher paying option if that's something available to you early on in your career. Also, people do tend to undervalue making more money in their early career. Taking a small raise and not negotiating for a slightly bigger raise early on could end up meaning a difference of tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of your career. Because if you accept, I can't do math like off the top of my head, but I do have a section in the book on this too. If you accept, even like a $2,000 difference, that's not going to sound that different, as a salary, right? But if then your salary, you're making $40,000 instead of $42,000 at the beginning of your career, then all of your increases are based on that going forward, and all increases are based on, taking 3% or 10% of that. Starting any amount higher is always going to be the better option, and it's always going to make a big difference, even if it doesn't seem like it. The 50-30-20 rule is a really great big picture budgeting rule. It means keeping 50% of your budget, of your discretionary income after taxes, having 50% of it or less go to necessary expenses, having 30% go to wants, and having 20% go to needs, which is savings and debt and long-term goals. I'm glad TFDA discusses ethical purchasing practices. Thank you. I am too. Do you think giving yourself the rule, only purchase from sites you can have free returns, would help the mindless buying, or do people just keep the unworn, unused items? I don't keep, I think you gotta like do some self work there. I don't think that's something I can tell anybody themselves whether that's gonna work for them, because I know I personally am terrible about making returns. It doesn't matter if returns are free or not. I know that if I buy something and I don't actually want it, if I'm gonna have to go out of my way to return it, I like probably just won't. So that has really influenced trying to be better about making my spending decisions from the get-go, and knowing I'm going to be happier with them without having to without having to actually buy it first, like knowing before I buy it that I'm going to be happy, most likely going to be happy with something, is really important. I know it's dying, but I think in-person shopping is like much better for that for me. So I try to do as little online shopping for clothes as possible. Going to a lot of weddings, one often feels pressure to get a new dress for the event. You hear from friends you can't have the same dress and photos again. How do you combat that thinking? Yes, you can. That's such a mean thing to say to friends. Like, you absolutely can wear the same thing again. And I don't want to just brush that off and say you should get new friends, but I do think that any friend shouldn't be pressuring other friends to make certain spending decisions in any capacity. Friends shouldn't be making you drink alcohol and pay for it if you don't want to. Friends shouldn't be making you go on vacations you don't want to do. And friends shouldn't be telling you that you can't rewear a dress to an event, especially if it's a perfectly acceptable dress to wear for the event's dress code. I've reworn dresses to events all the time, and if it's like a good dress, it's no one should care. I know people have their judgments, but you have to, I don't know, do the work to not let it affect you, or maybe do some introspection on whether that's a friendship that's really serving you, because I don't think that means they're a bad person. That's like, I'm not saying cut out every person who says something annoying, but I do think that the pressure to wear something new to all wedding events is just like sucky. It's just not nice. And I have one more I see here. Do you have tips to stay in style and on trend while not giving into the pressure of buying latest fads? I think my unpopular opinion here is to not care about trends so much. In style, I feel like stylish people, listen, I'm not a fashion expert by any means. I do think that stylish people, though, tend to wear things that they wear well, right? That that old adage, like, you wear the clothes, don't let the clothes wear you. So I think you just want to feel comfortable in what you're wearing. There's a lot of people on YouTube who do really great videos on dressing for your body type, if that's something that you care about. I have appreciated that kind of content, so I definitely check that out. There's one, her name is Martine something, but there's a French one we had on our podcast who has really great videos on that, and it's Justine LeConte, that's what it is. Justine LeConte is really great, and she does really great videos on styling yourself for your body type and stuff. But I think I actually love the trends of people figuring out their color season on TikTok. And I loved doing it for myself, even though, that's a little controversial too, because it's just like an easy way, a fun way to like figure out why you like things on you and why you like gravitate towards certain colors or don't gravitate towards certain colors. So I think that's really helpful. But I would say, yeah, I would focus more on silhouettes you're going to be happier with in the long run, rather than staying on trend. I know other people do care about trends, so unfortunately I just don't have a good good advice for that. I do think that there are a lot of really great sustainable fashion bloggers now or fashion influencers now that even though they probably are getting more stuff than the average person, are really great about reselling or donating to the right places that are actually going to reuse those clothes and repurpose them in a way that's going to be not just thrown in a landfill. And yeah, I would just do some research and find some of those influencers because they're going to have better advice than me. And that looks like the end of our questions.
Holly Trantham, this was wonderful. Such an important, 45 minutes with you. I think you've really inspired us all to really think about our spending and, think about our values. And Beyond Getting By is the book that I think needs to be in the libraries of all young women. It really will help you make the right decisions going forward. We all want financial independence. That is something that everybody strives for. And Beyond Getting by Holly Trantham is one of those books that can really help us achieve that. So I want to thank you so much, Holly, for sharing all your insights and this wonderful new book that just came out yesterday. We do have it on our shelves at Book Passage. You can come into the store and purchase it. You can order it online. We want you to get this book again into the hands of either you or other people that you know. We've got graduation coming up. We've got Mother's Day coming up. This would really be a wonderful gift item for many of those on our list. So again, Beyond Getting By is the title. We thank Holly for sharing all of her advice and insights with our Book Passage community. And thank you all for joining us. Again, this event will be archived, so you can rewatch it at a later date. Everyone, have a wonderful afternoon and evening. Thank you again for supporting Book Passage, supporting independent bookstores, and supporting important authors like Holly Trantham. Good night, everyone.